Rain poured down on the metal streets of New Vega Colony, the night alive with neon lights and cold wind. Eli walked alone after another long day at the repair shop, his hands rough from work, his boots splashing through dirty puddles. He wanted only sleep, but something strange caught his eyes near a corner stall. A young alien woman stood under the flickering light of a broken sign, her silver hair plastered to her blue skin, her thin dress soaked from the rain. People passed by her like she didn't exist. Some laughed, some stared, but no one stopped. Her eyes looked empty, like a star that had lost its light. Above her head was a dirty board with red letters that read, "Rent companions, $5 a night." Eli stopped. He didn't plan to, but he couldn't move. Something inside him twisted. She looked tired, exhausted, more like a person broken by life than someone offering anything. Her arms wrapped around herself for warmth. A small shiver ran through her body. The owner of the stall, a short alien man with greasy hands, waved at Eli. "Hey human, need company. Cheap price, 5 credits only." Eli shook his head, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not here for that," he said. Then he looked again at the girl. She was trembling, her eyes meeting his for only a second before dropping down again. That single look stayed with him. It wasn't the look of a stranger. It was the look of someone asking silently, "Please help me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the 5 credits. "I'll take her for the night," he said. The owner grinned, his teeth sharp. "Good choice, human, quiet one she is. Won't bother you." He handed Eli a key and pushed the girl forward roughly. She almost fell, but Eli caught her. Her hands were ice cold. He led her through the rain to his small rented room above his workshop. It wasn't much, just a bed, a heater, and an old kettle. When he told her to sit, she didn't move, just stood there like she expected to be hit. Eli sighed softly. "You're safe here," he said. She blinked, confused, her voice barely a whisper. "Safe?" As if she had never heard that word before. He took a towel, handed it to her, and turned away to give her privacy. He made tea. The smell of herbs filled the air. When he turned back, she was still standing there, holding the towel close. "Here," he said, placing the cup on the table. "Drink this. It'll warm you up." She hesitated, then took it slowly, her hands shaking. "You don't want anything?" she asked, her voice small, broken. Eli frowned. "No, I just want you to eat and rest. That's all." She looked at him again, her eyes wide, surprised, maybe even scared after a long silence. She said quietly, "My name is Lyra." He nodded. "I'm Eli," he said, smiling gently. "Nice to meet you." "Lyra." She tried to smile back, but it didn't reach her eyes. When she finished her tea, she sat on the bed's edge, her gaze fixed on the floor. Outside, thunder rolled. She whispered something he couldn't catch. "What did you say?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Nothing, I was just thanking the stars for this roof." Her words were heavy, filled with pain he couldn't yet understand. Later that night, Eli watched her from the chair near the window. She fell asleep, still clutching the towel, her breathing uneven. The rain outside softened, turning into a quiet rhythm. He didn't know why he felt so drawn to her, but something about her sadness didn't let him rest in the middle of the night. He woke up to the sound of movement. The door creaked, and when he looked, Lyra was gone. Her cup was empty, her towel folded neatly. The window was half open, the cold air brushing through. Eli rushed downstairs, heart pounding. He ran into the street calling her name, but the rain had washed away her footprints. He asked the shopkeeper, who was still awake counting his money. "The girl, where is she?" The alien smirked. "Gone, human. Someone came and bought her early this morning. She's not yours anymore." Eli froze. "Bought?" he repeated, his chest tightening. "Yes, sold her good. Big price, too," the man laughed. Eli didn't know why his hands shook with anger. He turned away before he did something he'd regret. The image of Lyra's empty eyes haunted him. He felt something strange, not just guilt, but a fire deep inside. He had seen injustice before, but this was different, this was personal. As he stood under the rain again, the neon lights reflecting in the puddles like broken stars, Eli whispered to himself, "I'm going to find her." His voice steady, his eyes hard. He didn't know where she was taken or why someone bought her. But one thing he knew for sure. He couldn't just walk away this time. The rain fell harder, thunder echoed through the night. And somewhere in the distance, a faint sound of ships hummed. The city slept, unaware that a simple human mechanic had just taken his first step toward something far greater than himself, toward a destiny that would change not only his life but the fate of an entire world. Morning came slowly, but for Eli it brought no peace. The sound of rain had stopped, but his heart still pounded like it hadn't. He barely slept. His mind replayed the image of Lyra's pale face and the cruel laughter of the shopkeeper. He didn't know why he cared so much. He had seen suffering before. New Vega was full of it. Yet this time it felt different, this time it felt wrong. He walked through the colony's lower district, where the light never reached and the air smelled like metal and oil. People here sold anything, machines, drugs, and even lives. He passed by groups of alien workers with collars on their necks, their eyes hollow. No one dared to look up. Posters on the wall said "Property of Vega Trade Guild," and Eli's anger burned stronger. He stopped at a corner where the crowd gathered around a loud voice. An auctioneer shouted from a platform, "Fresh labor, fresh beauty, straight from the outer colonies." His words echoed through the narrow streets. Eli's eyes darted from one cage to another, searching, hoping he was wrong, but then he saw her. Lyra sat on the ground inside a small cage, her hands bound with metal cuffs. Her silver hair tangled, her face tired. She didn't even seem to notice the crowd shouting bids. Her spirit looked crushed, as if she had given up completely. The auctioneer laughed. "This one's weak damaged goods, 5 credits starting price." The crowd jeered, calling her useless. Eli's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. She was no item to be sold, she was a person. And now strangers were fighting to own her. When no one raised the price, the auctioneer sighed. "Fine, she's cheap. Take her for 4. The merchant from the night before smirked from the edge of the crowd. Counting his money, Eli's voice cut through the noise. 10, he said firmly. The crowd went silent for a second. Then laughter followed. 10? For that thing? Someone mocked. "You must be lonely, human," another shouted. Eli ignored them. His eyes stayed on Lyra. The auctioneer grinned. 10 credits? Sold to the soft-hearted human, he shouted, slapping his hands together. When the gate opened, Eli walked forward. His heart beating hard, he knelt beside her, his voice calm but full of something fierce. "It's over now," he said softly. She didn't move, didn't even look at him. He reached out, breaking the collar's lock with his tool. The chain clanged to the ground. Her wrists were bruised. He looked up at the auctioneer. "No one owns her now," he said. The alien merchant snorted. "You think you can just free her? You bought her, that makes you the owner." Eli stood up slowly, his eyes cold. "Then I own her freedom," he said, and walked away, taking Lyra's hand gently. She stumbled as she walked, her body weak, but she didn't resist. As they turned the corner, she whispered, "Why did you do that?" Her voice cracked like it hadn't been used in days. Eli looked ahead. "Because it was the right thing to do." She shook her head slowly. "Humans don't do this. They laugh, they hurt, they buy, they sell." Eli sighed. "Maybe you just met the wrong kind of humans." He found an abandoned workshop nearby, a place where he used to fix drones. The air smelled of rust and dust. He made her sit on a crate, handed her a small bottle of water. She drank it slowly, her eyes full of confusion. "You could have left me," she said quietly. "No one would care." He looked at her seriously. "I care." The words came out before he even thought. For a moment, silence filled the room. Only the hum of old machines broke it. She finally said, "Back home, humans were stories. The monsters from the sky who came with fire, who took everything." Her voice trembled. "I thought all humans were the same." Eli's chest tightened. He didn't know what to say, so he just said, "I'm sorry for what we did." She looked up, surprised. "You're not like them," she whispered. "You look at me, but you don't see a thing. You see a person." He smiled softly. "That's because you are one." They spent the night there, the rain starting again outside. Eli fixed a small heater while Lyra sat near the light, her eyes watching him work. He noticed how her fingers traced strange patterns on her arm, glowing softly like silver threads. He wanted to ask, but didn't. He just knew she wasn't ordinary. Before sleep, she spoke again, her tone quiet but filled with something deep. "You shouldn't have done this," she said. "They will come for me." Eli looked up. "Who?" She hesitated. "The guild, they think my kind can heal. My blood. It's rare." Her hands shook slightly. "They'll hunt you too now." Eli leaned back against the wall, his face calm even as his mind raced. "Let them come," he said. "I've got tools. And I've got reason." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You're strange." "Human," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "I've been called worse." As the night deepened, Lyra slowly fell asleep near the heater, her face peaceful for the first time. Eli watched her quietly, his mind full of questions and his heart full of determination. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to lose her again. Outside, the colony's lights flickered like dying stars, and somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched them, waiting, plotting. The hunt had already begun, but Eli didn't know it yet. He only knew that for 5 credits, he hadn't bought a servant. He had bought a fight for freedom, one that was only beginning. The night was cold again, and the colony slept under the twin moons, silent and heavy with fog. Inside the old workshop, Eli sat beside the dim heater, watching Lyra sleep, her breathing slow, her face calm for the first time since he'd met her. Outside, the wind howled through the metal walls, but in that small space, there was quiet, a fragile kind of peace. When morning came, she woke up slowly, blinking at the weak sunlight filtering through the broken window. For a moment, she looked confused, like she'd forgotten where she was. Then her eyes found Eli sitting with a cup of coffee in his hand. He gave her a small smile. "Morning," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. "Morning," she whispered, her voice still soft and unsure. He handed her a piece of bread and a small fruit. She looked at it like it was treasure. She ate slowly, as if afraid it would vanish. Eli didn't ask questions. He just watched her quietly, letting her eat. After a while, she said, "You could sell me again, make a lot of money." He shook his head. "Not interested." She looked at him carefully. "Then why are you helping me?" Eli didn't have an easy answer. He looked out the window, watching the faint mist rise over the streets. "Because no one else will," he said finally. "And maybe because I'm tired of watching bad things happen and doing nothing." Lyra tilted her head, her eyes searching his. "Humans don't usually care about aliens," she said quietly. Eli gave a small smile. "Guess I'm not usual." They spent the next few days hiding in the workshop. Eli repaired an old hover bike while Lyra tried to clean the place. She moved carefully, still weak, but each day she spoke a little more. She told him about her home world, a planet of blue oceans and silver trees now destroyed. "They called it Velis," she said softly, "the world of singing stars, because at night the wind made the trees hum." Eli listened, picturing a place that no longer existed. One night, when the power went out, the two sat outside on the roof, the sky full of stars, far brighter than Earth's sky. Lyra pointed up. "Do you know their names?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "No, I just call them stars." She smiled faintly. "On Velis, every star had a name. We believed they watched over us." Her voice grew distant. "When we left, we promised never to forget their names, but now, I can't remember them all." Eli looked at her, the soft light from the moons reflecting in her silver eyes. "Then we'll name them again," he said quietly. She turned to him, surprised. "You'd do that?" He nodded. "Sure, we'll make new names for the lost ones." She smiled, truly smiled, for the first time, a small, trembling smile that made her look alive again. "You're strange, human," she said again. But there was warmth in her tone this time. He pointed to the brightest one above. "That one's hope," he said, "because it's the only thing that keeps us going." She looked up and whispered, "Then that one," she pointed to another star, "that's mercy." He nodded. "And that one, faith." For a while they just sat there, naming the stars like children, laughing softly, forgetting the world below, forgetting the danger that still hunted them. But peace never lasted long on New Vega. The next morning, as Eli worked on the hoverbike, a small drone buzzed past the window, its red light blinking. He froze. The sound of its mechanical hum sent a chill through his spine. Lyra's expression changed instantly. Fear flashed in her eyes. "They found us," she whispered. Eli grabbed his tools, smashing the drone with one strike before it could send a signal. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the air. Lyra backed away, trembling. "You don't understand. They'll come now." she said, her voice shaking. They won't stop until they have me. Eli looked at her. Then we'll go before they do. He packed a small bag, tools, food, and a few spare batteries. Can you walk? She nodded weakly. Yes, she said, though her legs trembled. They left the workshop behind, stepping into the narrow back streets, the smell of metal and dust heavy around them. Every sound felt dangerous, every shadow a threat. Lyra's hand brushed his arm as they moved quickly, and he could feel how cold she was. He looked at her and said, "We'll find somewhere safe." She shook her head. "There's no safe place for my kind." They reached the outer edge of the colony, where desert sands began, and beyond them, the old trade routes. Eli stopped by a broken transport ship half buried in dust. "We can use this," he said. "I can fix it, maybe get it flying." She looked at him, uncertain. "You'd risk all this for me?" He met her gaze. "For you? Yes." She looked down, silent, then whispered, "Why?" Eli didn't know how to answer that either. He just said softly, "Because when I look at you, I don't see an alien. I see someone worth saving." She looked at him for a long time, her eyes bright under the twin suns. "On Velis," she said slowly. "There was a word for someone like you." He smiled faintly. "Yeah? What word?" She leaned closer and whispered, "Stara." It means the one who saves stars. Eli didn't know what to say, but the name stayed with him, echoing in his mind like a promise. As the sun set behind the dunes, the broken ship shimmered under the fading light, and he knew. This was only the beginning. Somewhere far away, the guild's ships were already moving, scanners searching, hunters ready. But inside that silent desert, one human and one alien girl looked up at the stars they'd named together, and for the first time, they both believed that maybe, just maybe, the stars were watching back. The wind howled across the empty desert as dawn painted the sand in gold. Eli worked tirelessly on the broken ship, its old panels creaking under his hands. Lyra sat nearby, watching him in silence. Her long silver hair caught the early light like glass. The air between them felt heavy with something unsaid. She wanted to believe they were safe. But deep inside, she knew safety never lasted. By mid-morning, the hum of engines echoed across the dunes, faint but growing. Lyra's body stiffened instantly. Her eyes widened. "They're coming," she whispered. Eli stopped listening. The sound wasn't the wind. It was too steady, too sharp. He grabbed his tools and moved quickly, covering the ship's surface with sand and cloth to hide it. "Inside," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." Lyra obeyed, slipping into the ship's dark interior, the air thick with dust. Eli stood outside pretending to work on an engine coil as 3 black hovercrafts appeared on the horizon. Kicking up waves of sand, they stopped a few meters away, and armed figures stepped out, their armor marked with the emblem of the Trade Guild, a red serpent coiled around a planet. The leader, a tall alien with gray scales and cold yellow eyes, walked forward, his voice sharp. "Human mechanic, state your name." Eli wiped his hands and said evenly, "Eli Cain, just fixing this wreck, nothing more." The officer's gaze swept over the ship. "You live far from the city, Cain." Eli shrugged. "Work's quiet out here." The officer tilted his head. "We're looking for someone, a fugitive." His tone turned dark. "A female of the Velis species, silver hair, glowing eyes. Seen her?" Eli met his gaze without flinching. "Can't say I have. Haven't seen anyone in days." The officer studied him for a long moment, then gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You humans are good liars," he said softly, "but not good enough." He signaled his men. They began scanning the area. One moved closer to the ship, and Eli's pulse quickened. The machine in the soldier's hand beeped faintly. Lyra's body trembled inside. Her hand pressed against her chest to stop the sound of her breathing. Eli saw the soldier raise his weapon slightly. "Don't touch that!" Eli shouted, stepping forward. The officer raised a brow. Why not? Eli forced a laugh. Because the engine's unstable, you poke it wrong, it'll blow your fancy scanner to pieces. The soldier hesitated, looking at his commander. The officer's eyes narrowed. He studied Eli again, then finally waved his hand. Enough. If she's here, we'll find her soon. He turned to leave but paused, his voice dropping low. If you see her, Kane, you'll call us. Eli smiled faintly. Of course, he said, but his eyes told another story. The officer smirked. Be careful, human. Kindness is dangerous these days. Then he and his men climbed back onto their crafts. The engines roared and the sand swallowed them as they disappeared into the horizon. Eli waited until the sound was gone, then rushed inside. They're gone, he whispered. Lyra came out slowly, her face pale. You lied for me, she said softly, her voice trembling. They would have killed you if they knew. Eli smiled. Yeah. Well, I've been called worse than dead. She didn't laugh. She just stared at him, her eyes full of something like fear and gratitude mixed together. That night, they sat by a small campfire near the ship. The stars spread wide above them. Lyra stared at the flames, her fingers tracing invisible symbols in the air. Eli watched her quietly. You really think they won't find us? He asked. She shook her head. They always find what they want. Her tone was bitter. You should leave me. You could still go back to your life, Eli frowned. And do what? Pretend none of this happened? Pretend I didn't meet you? She looked up, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Why? She asked again. Why risk your life for me? Eli poked the fire with a metal rod, sparks dancing in the air. Because you deserve better than being hunted, he said. Because no one deserves to live in chains. She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, You sound like one of the old heroes from our stories. He laughed quietly. I'm no hero. I'm just a man who's tired of watching monsters win. She smiled faintly. Sometimes that's how heroes start. Later that night, as they prepared to rest, Eli noticed strange lights flickering far off in the dunes. He frowned. Scouts again? He murmured. Lyra shook her head slowly. No, that light. It's not theirs. She stood up, walking toward the edge of the hill, the wind blowing her hair like silver fire. That's something older, she whispered. Something my people left behind. Eli followed her gaze. The distant light pulsed rhythmically, almost alive. What is it? He asked. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. A beacon, she said. My ancestors used them to call for help, but they were thought lost after the fall. Her voice trembled with hope. If that beacon still works, someone might come. Eli's eyes narrowed. Then we need to reach it before the guild does. She looked at him, surprised again. You'd go with me? He nodded. You think I'm letting you wander off into the desert alone? She smiled softly. You're stubborn, human. He grinned. And you're terrible at hiding. As the two packed supplies and prepared the old ship, the wind grew stronger, carrying sand like whispers of the past in the distance. The light of the beacon pulsed brighter, calling them forward. They didn't know if it was salvation or a trap, but they both knew one thing, whatever waited out there. They'd face it together, high above, unseen by either of them. A small drone recorded the beacon's signal and sent it straight to the guild's command ship. The officer from earlier smiled coldly as he watched the feed. Let them run, he said. We'll take them both. And as the desert night deepened, the stars burned silently, watching two small figures walking toward destiny. One human, one alien, both unaware that their story was about to shake the entire galaxy. The next morning, the desert sky burned orange, and the air shimmered with heat. Eli and Lyra rode across the dunes on the repaired hovercraft. The engine groaned, but it held together behind them. The faint tracks of their journey stretched like scars in the sand. Ahead, a pale blue glow pulsed faintly on the horizon. The beacon. Their only hope, Lyra held onto the rail, her silver hair whipping in the wind, her eyes fixed on the light ahead. It's still working, she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. After all this time? Eli nodded, his face set in determination. Then we'll make it before night. But even as he said it, dark clouds began to gather in the distance, thick and heavy, rolling like angry waves. By midday, the wind had grown fierce. Grains of sand cut through the air like knives. Visibility dropped. The sky turned gray-brown. Storm's coming fast, Eli shouted over the roar. Hold tight. Lyra clutched the seat, the wind pulling at her clothes. The hovercraft shook violently. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting the dunes in eerie silver. They could barely see anything when the first shockwave hit. A wall of sand slammed into them. The hovercraft spun sideways. Eli struggled to control it, the engine screamed, and then the world turned upside down. They crashed into the sand, rolling down a steep dune. The sound of metal tearing filled the air. When Eli opened his eyes, everything was silent except for the soft hiss of the wind. His mouth was full of sand. His head throbbed. He pushed himself up slowly. "Lyra!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. There was no answer. Panic hit him. He crawled through the sand, searching, finally spotting a faint shimmer a few feet away. Lyra lay half-buried, her hair spread around her like a halo. He stumbled to her side, brushing sand from her face. Her skin cold to the touch. "Lyra, wake up," he said urgently. She stirred weakly, her eyes fluttering open. "Eli," she whispered. "I'm fine." But her voice trembled. Blood streaked down her arm from a deep cut. Eli tore a piece of cloth from his shirt and wrapped it around her wound. His hands shaking. "We need shelter," he said, scanning the storm around them. Through the wall of sand, he spotted the dark shape of a rock formation ahead. He lifted her carefully and started walking, step by step, fighting against the wind. Every grain of sand stung his face. Every breath burned, but he didn't stop. They reached a narrow cave carved into the rocks. Eli set her down gently inside. The air inside was still, almost calm compared to the storm outside. Lightning flashed beyond the entrance. Lighting up the darkness, Lyra looked at him, her voice weak. "You saved me again," he smiled faintly. "You make it a habit to get into trouble," she smiled back just a little. "You make it a habit to follow me." Eli built a small fire with scraps of fuel from the hovercraft. The faint warmth spread through the cave. He checked her wound again. It had stopped bleeding, but her skin glowed faintly where the cut was. "That's not normal," he said quietly. She looked at the light spreading under her skin and sighed. "It's part of what they want from me," she whispered. "My blood can heal, even the radiation sickness their soldiers suffer. That's why the guild hunts us. We're more valuable than gold." Eli sat beside her, silent for a moment, then said, "They'll never have you. Not while I'm breathing." She looked at him sadly. "You can't fight the guild. Eli, they have fleets, armies, worlds," he smiled tiredly. "Then they'll just have to make room for one more problem." Outside, the storm raged on, thunder rolling across the dunes like war drums. Inside the cave, Lyra reached out and touched his hand, her fingers glowing faintly. "When I was a child," she whispered, "my mother used to tell me that stars could hide inside people, that their light never dies, even when everything else does." She looked at him, her eyes soft. "I think she was talking about someone like you." Eli didn't know what to say. His throat tightened, he only whispered, "Then let's make sure that light keeps burning." She nodded, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. For a long time they sat like that, listening to the wind's scream soften into a dull hum. When the storm finally eased, Eli stepped outside to check the hovercraft. It was half buried, but still repairable. The sky above was clearer now, stars beginning to show. He turned to call for Lyra, but then he saw movement on the dunes, dark figures emerging through the settling dust, armored soldiers with red guild emblems shining on their chests. Eli's stomach dropped. "No," he muttered. He ran back inside. "Lyra, we've got company." She rose slowly, her wounds already closing, her eyes glowing brighter. "Then it's time," she said quietly. "They won't stop until one of us is gone." Eli picked up his plasma rifle, checking the charge. "Then we make sure it's not us." The first explosion hit seconds later. The entrance of the cave burst in flame, sand and rock raining down. Eli pulled Lyra behind cover, firing bursts into the smoke. Their attackers spread across the ridge, red beams cutting through the darkness. Lyra raised her hands, light blooming between her palms like liquid fire. A wave of silver energy burst outward, knocking the soldiers back, their weapons sizzling in the sand. Eli looked at her awestruck. "Remind me never to make you angry," he said breathlessly. She smirked faintly. "You'd lose." The air filled with smoke and fire as the last of the soldiers retreated, their crafts damaged. Eli helped her to her feet. "We have to move now," he said, "before they call reinforcements." She nodded, looking out at the desert where the beacon still glowed faintly in the distance. "Then let's finish this," she whispered. Together they climbed back onto the broken hovercraft, the wind still thick with dust and ash. As they sped toward the blue light on the horizon, Eli glanced at her, her silver glow reflecting in his eyes. "We're almost there," he said, and she whispered, "Yes. And after this, nothing will ever be the same." Behind them, the wrecked guild soldiers sent a distress signal to orbit, and high above the planet, a massive cruiser turned its engines toward the desert, hunting two fugitives whose fate would soon change the course of the stars themselves. The night sky burned with red streaks of plasma fire. The guild cruiser descended through the clouds like a metal beast, its engines roaring, the sand below glowing under its lights. Eli and Lyra rode fast across the dunes on the battered hovercraft. Their only hope was the beacon now shining brighter than ever, a pillar of blue light piercing the heavens. Eli's hands gripped the controls, every muscle tense. "They're right above us," he shouted over the wind. Lyra looked back. The cruiser's lower bays were opening, dark figures dropping from the sky. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They'll destroy everything to take me back." Eli's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure they get nothing." The first wave of drones swooped down, firing beams of red light. The sand exploded around them. Eli swerved sharply, the hovercraft shaking under the impact. "Hold on!" he yelled. Lyra raised her hands, her eyes glowing like molten silver. Energy rippled through the air, and a burst of light shot from her palms, hitting one of the drones. It melted mid-air, falling in flames, but for every drone destroyed, two more appeared, surrounding them like vultures. Eli pulled a lever, releasing a trail of smoke behind them. "That'll confuse their sensors for a few seconds," he said through gritted teeth. Lyra looked at him with something close to admiration. "You're full of tricks, human," he smirked. "Old habit." Ahead, the beacon towered from the ground, a massive crystal structure half buried in sand, glowing with ancient energy. As they approached, the light pulsed faster. As if it recognized her, Lyra's voice trembled. "It's Valiant tech. It's still alive." Eli slowed the craft near the base. "Then use it, call your people." She jumped off, placing her glowing hands against the crystal. The surface lit up with veins of blue light spreading outward like lightning, her voice soft but strong as she spoke in her native tongue. The air vibrated. The beacon responded with a deep hum that shook the ground far above. The signal shot into space. Eli looked up and froze. The guild cruiser was lowering its cannons, charging for a massive strike. "They're going to vaporize the whole site." He shouted, "Lyra, hurry!" Sparks rained from the beacon. The wind howled, and the blue light wrapped around her like a storm. Her voice grew louder, her words echoing with power. Then suddenly, silence. The beacon went dark for a heartbeat, and Lyra collapsed to her knees, the light from her body fading. Eli ran to her, catching her before she fell. Hey, stay with me," he said, shaking her gently. She opened her eyes weakly. "I sent the call," she whispered. "They're coming." Before Eli could answer, the ground exploded beside them. The cruiser shot mist by meters, throwing them both to the sand. Eli coughed, grabbing his rifle. "We need to move," he shouted. He fired at the approaching soldiers, his shots sparking against their armor. One fell, then another, but there were too many. Lyra struggled to her feet, her body trembling. The glow in her veins flickered. "Eli, stop," she said softly. "You can't fight them all." He reloaded. "Watch me." She grabbed his arm, her touch burning with light. "No," she said firmly. "If they take me, they win. But if we destroy the beacon, they get nothing." Eli stared at her. "That beacon is your people's hope." She looked at him sadly. "Hope means nothing if they use it to hunt more of us." For a moment, neither spoke, the wind roaring between them. Finally, Eli nodded slowly. "All right," he said, "but we do it together." She smiled faintly. "Always." Eli rigged his last plasma cells to the beacon's core, setting the timer. 30 seconds, he said. "Run when I say." Lyra placed her hand on his cheek. "You could still leave," she whispered. "No one would blame you." Eli shook his head. "I didn't come this far to run." Her eyes shimmered with tears. "You're mad, human." He smiled. "Takes one to know one." The ground trembled again. Guild troops closed in, their weapons aimed, their commander's voice booming. "Surrender the Velian and you may live." Eli shouted back, "You'll have to kill us both." The commander raised his hand. "As you wish." Eli hit the detonator. "Now." He grabbed Lyra and ran toward the dunes. The explosion ripped through the desert like thunder. The beacon erupted in a column of blue fire, Swallowing everything in light, the shock wave hurled them forward, sand and fire raining from the sky. When the light faded, the beacon was gone. Only a smoking crater remained. The guild troops scattered, their systems fried by the energy surge. Eli coughed, pushing himself up. Still alive, he muttered. Then looked at Lyra. She was unconscious, her skin faintly glowing. He lifted her gently. "Hang on, Stargirl," he whispered. "We're not done yet." He looked up at the night sky and for the first time saw faint streaks of light descending through the clouds. Not guild ships, but smaller crafts, silver and blue. Moving in formation, Lyra's people answering the call. Eli smiled faintly, exhausted. "Guess your stars heard you," he murmured, collapsing beside her as the Velian ships landed silently around them, their lights reflecting in his tired eyes. The war was far from over, but the fire had begun, and as the desert wind blew over the scorched sand, one truth burned brighter than the stars. Sometimes it takes a single human heart to reignite an entire civilization. The desert was quiet again, but the silence carried the weight of everything that had happened. The dunes still glowed faintly where the beacon had exploded, waves of heat rising into the cold dawn. Eli woke slowly, the sand beneath him warm. His body aching from the blast above him, the sky had changed, no longer filled with fire, but with silver shapes gliding through the morning light. Valian ships, sleek and luminous, unlike anything human-made. He turned his head and saw Lyra lying beside him. Her hair spread like a halo on the sand, her body still faintly glowing. He crawled to her side, his voice shaking. "Lyra, wake up, come on, we made it." Her chest rose slowly, her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment he saw confusion, then recognition, then relief. "Eli," she whispered weakly, "you're alive." He smiled tiredly. "Barely, but yeah." A shadow fell over them. Figures stepped down from the nearest ship, Valian warriors, tall and graceful, their armor shining like glass. One of them knelt beside Lyra, speaking quickly in her language. She responded faintly. The warrior turned to Eli, his tone careful. "Human, she called us with her last strength. We are in your debt." Eli shook his head. "Just help her. Please." They carried her into the ship. Eli followed, blinking at the light inside. It felt alive, the walls pulsing softly with energy. As they placed Lyra on a healing platform, one of the Velian doctors touched Eli's arm. "You should rest," she said. But he didn't move, his eyes never left Lyra. He watched as the light around her body grew stronger, silver veins spreading across her skin, her breathing steadied, color returning to her face. After a long silence, the doctor turned to him. "She'll live," she said gently. "But she gave more of her energy than any being should to protect you, to destroy what hunted her." Eli felt his chest tighten. "She saved me." "Again," he whispered. The doctor nodded. "And perhaps she saved us all." He sat beside her for hours, listening to the hum of the ship as it rose from the desert, leaving the broken land behind. Through the window he saw the guild cruiser burning far below, fragments falling like dying stars, and for the first time he felt hope. When Lyra finally woke, the ship was already among the clouds. She looked weak but peaceful, her voice soft. "You stayed," she said. Eli chuckled. "You sound surprised." She smiled faintly. "I thought you'd be smarter," he grinned. "Never claimed to be." They both laughed quietly, the sound gentle and real. Then her expression turned serious. "We're going home," she whispered. "What's left of it?" Eli looked out the window, where a blue-green planet shimmered in the distance. "Veles?" he asked. She nodded. "The survivors built sanctuaries in the northern valley, maybe. We can start again." Her voice trembled. "You'll come with us?" Eli looked at her, his eyes tired but kind. "You think I'd leave you now?" She stared at him for a moment, then whispered, "You're not like anyone I've ever met." He smiled softly. "Good, I'd hate to be normal." When they landed, the air was different, clean, filled with the scent of strange flowers and sea breeze. Silver trees swayed under twin suns. Other Velian survivors gathered, their eyes wide when they saw her. Some whispered her name in awe. "The heir of the singing stars," one said. "The one who called us home." Lyra lowered her head humbly. "Not me alone," she said. "He stood beside me when no one else did." She turned toward Eli, and every alien there looked at him with quiet respect. Days passed and life began to grow again on Veles. The broken people rebuilding. Eli worked with them, repairing old machines, teaching them human tools, sometimes laughing with their children who touched his rough hands curiously, calling him Starfixer. And every night he and Lyra sat by the shore watching the two suns sink into the waves. One evening, as the sky turned gold and violet, Lyra stood beside him, the breeze playing with her hair. "Do you ever miss your world?" she asked softly. Eli thought for a moment, then said, "Sometimes, but I think I found a better one." She smiled. "You're a terrible liar," he laughed. "I try." Then his face softened. "Truth is, I just found something worth staying for." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "You gave everything for me, Eli. You bought me for 5 credits and somehow gave me back an entire world." He shook his head. "No, Lyra, you gave it back to yourself." She stepped closer, her hand finding his. "Still," she whispered, "if the stars ever ask what my life is worth, I'll tell them. 5 credits and 1 human heart." They stood in silence for a long moment, the sea whispering at their feet, her glow mingling with the sunset. Eli looked up at the stars, the same ones they had named in the desert. Hope, mercy, faith, they shone brighter than ever. Then a soft voice broke the quiet. "You know," Lyra said, "my people used to say when 2 lights cross in the sky, their paths are forever linked." Eli looked at her, smiling faintly. "Guess we'll have to test that theory." She squeezed his hand gently. "We already have." As night fell, the stars reflected in the calm water. 2 figures stood together under the twin moons. 1 human, 1 alien, their shadows long and intertwined. Behind them, a city of silver lights rose again from the ashes. Far above, among the stars they had named, something shimmered, a faint, eternal echo of a promise made in the rain, kept through fire and storm, and sealed forever under the sky they now shared. Because in the end, Eli hadn't just bought her freedom, he'd bought their forever.